What up, my friends? Welcome to our YouTube channel. Robin Black, Mark Manaharan sitting over there. These are my friends on Periscope. If you don't follow me on Periscope, it's at Robin Black MMA. And hey, thanks for hanging. Maybe they'll have a question or two. If you're listening on iTunes or SoundCloud, thank you so much. We appreciate it all. It's been very cool. As of the time we're recording this, 17,000 people have followed us on YouTube. Which is so cool. That's like an arena. That's more people than fills the Air Canada Centre hockey arena here. That is so cool. And, you know, all we're doing is following our curiosity and more importantly for me, personally, trying to keep peeling back the layer, okay? This is after the hostilities. Every Sunday or Monday, we're gonna do this to some degree, look back at the fights that happened. And we're looking back to see what we can learn. We're not just going to recap it. We're not just going to go, you know, and what's next for this guy. You know my feelings on trying to push further all the time. There are certain things. Now, first off, we are all distracted by Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. Guilty as charged, right here. All of us are. Now, some of our distractions are, have the UFC given any feedback? Question over here. Some of our distractions are, I hate McGregor, hate this guy. This is ruining boxing. Some of our distractions are, this guy has no chance. This shouldn't be happening. All that's some of ours. Others of ours is, wow, this is wild. This is crazy. Does he have a chance? But we're distracted. I am too. Less people watch this UFC on Fox, I think, than almost anyone. And that's not because Chris Weidman and Kelvin Gastelum are not brilliant. We're distracted. We're humans. This is interesting to us. It's a shiny thing, and we're looking at it. It's a shiny thing over there. McGregor's fighting Mayweather. Like, it's distracting to us. So as a result, I was thrilled to see Weidman Gastelum. It was beautiful. I love both of those artists. I'm just an enormous fan of their work and the moments that they find in the cage, and I was excited to see them fight each other, but also nervous, you know? I like them both. I want them to succeed as somebody who admires the athletes and likes them personally. There was also Gian Villante versus Patrick Cummins, and we had Darren Elkins versus Dennis Bermudez. Now, I'm not going to talk about those fights as much, and it's not because I don't love them. It's not because I didn't find them beautiful and amazing. What those fights represent to me is that center of where the athletes are and the center of where these fights are, which is many of them are studying a lot of the same techniques, and in each position, they have little battles that they know that need to execute. You see the same thing in football, you see the same thing in just about any sport, you see the same thing in chess. There's a moment, we get into a position. In that position, there's a battle. That battle is won and lost on inches, and each one. We're here, I need to rotate my wrist and get there. You need to rotate your wrist and get there. This is a battle. I have the underhook. You want to dig in for the underhook. I want to dig back in for it. There's a battle. I want to put my head under your chin. When I've pushed you up against the cage, I want to flatten your hip and square you. You want to turn and blade your hip and stagger it. And each of those are battles. And when those types of fights happen, they're incredible to watch, because if you don't know each of those battles, you can learn them. Some of which will be from the commentary, some of which will be from the analysis, some of which will be your own self watching them and going, I always see this guy here, always in that spot, I see that pattern. What are they doing? And figure it out. But the analysis of that stuff has been done. I started doing this work in 2013, analyzing these moments, and I think we all know them now. And if we don't, we will soon. I just think it's this incredible, wonderful thing now when we're talking about Weidman versus Gastelum. So those two fights were battle inch for inch, and the beauty, and sorry to jump all over, the beauty in those two fights, the Cummins fight and the Darren the Damage Elkins fight, is it becomes about grit and heart and hard work and striving and never giving up and overcoming fatigue. And I will enjoy watching human beings do that for the rest of time. I will. And if and when we feel the desire to go deeper and see what it means, we'll go into how they manage their energy systems and what the psychological challenge is when you are more tired than him, and how you trick a man when you've 2 or 3 times dug for the underhook and this time you squash the overhook. But the truth is, we all know that now. When you hear the commentators say, oh, he's got to manage his distance, and when he comes into boxing range, he's got to let his hands go so it'll pay dividends. You all know that now. You do. So as we get to Weidman versus Kelvin, should we talk about the fact that when a man has a 7.5-inch reach advantage, something like that, could be more when you really lined him up. 7.5-inch reach advantage. You and I are of fairly equal skill. We're both incredibly talented fighters. We're not really. You're you and I'm me, and we're not. But pretend we're these guys. And we're both incredibly talented. You now have a physical advantage that's so fucking enormous. 7.5-inch reach advantage. Now, if Kelvin Gastelum is fighting somebody with far less skill than him, with far less sensitivity and awareness and ability to, express himself in the right moments, and he's able to manipulate that guy and get him to be flat-footed, and when his jab dangles out, chase it back in, great. Or if he had been a lifelong specialist at overcoming range, like John Dodson is. Think about that. Let's go off on this little tangent for a moment. When you see a John Dodson fight, and we talk about it, and somebody says, well, whether that is the other coach or the other guy fighting, or us at home hanging out and having a beer, and we go, he's got to overcome the reach disadvantage. That's not a disadvantage. That's normal. John Dodson, every fight his whole life, from the day that he has a reach advantage, must be the most mind-blowing thing. It's not a disadvantage if that is a perpetual fact of life. John Dodson faces people with 5 and 6 inch longer reach than him. We call it a reach advantage, but it is not one, because that's normal to him. It's normal. Every single day he has become a specialist at attacking people, penetrating in, slipping off the line, closing distance and slipping out. He's become a lifelong specialist at dealing with a difference in reach. And again, I'm not going to use the word advantage. It's the wrong word. Difference. Higher length, longer reach. Say what you want, but it is not an advantage for you if you're facing a guy who's always faced it. It's normal for him. It's weird for you. You've never faced somebody who has a lifelong specialization at dealing with the things that you believe are advantages. So that's John Dodson. That's not Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum I've spent some quality time with him. We watched Cub Swanson versus Doo Ho Choi together, and there is, on this very YouTube channel, there's a hotel hangout where he and I have a beer together and chat. And he's told me he's been very complimentary. I don't know if he's just a very nice guy, but he talks about the ideas that myself and people like me introduced 3-4 years ago about range, distance, and the management of that. And when I say Lawrence Kenshin or Jack Slack or BJJ Scout or myself introduced those, we did. They weren't discussed 4 years ago. And they weren't just not discussed on Fox. They weren't discussed in gyms. The game changes so incredibly rapidly that ideas that are normal now were new 3 years ago, normal now. Now, if you think that normal, which is what we were saying about Elkins versus Damitz, they train what is now normal. That becomes standard, becomes what must be done. It's the right thing to do. It's in business, they call it best practices. If anybody ever tells you in your office, this is best practices, fire that person or quit that job. Because best practices means worst practices. It means what the fuck everybody else is doing. Why would you do what everybody else is doing? By the time you incorporate best practices at your job, they're now old practices. Anyways, sorry, I'm just getting fucking going crazy over here. So anyways, that's what's happening over there. So Kelvin and his team, he started to really focus on and really enjoy what he called, when we were hanging out, stuff you guys talk about, like distance management, range management. 3 years ago, that was very new. Now it is just a comparative skill. Like when people talk about, this guy only 4 years ago, was like, he's a better striker, but he's a better grappler. That wasn't enough. So now we go, well, he's got better hands, but he's got better kicks. He's better at long range, and he's better. It's just comparative shit. It's not real. Anyways, we're going to go into a little bit of this with the Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, peeling back the layers. Anyways, if we just sit there and look at what Kelvin has been doing, he's been beating what was that guy, a Green Beret? Tim Kennedy's Ranger, legit. And then he beat Vitor, legit. He beat them by popping in, hitting them, and popping back out. He called it range management. That was the term for it 3-4 years ago. That's not enough anymore, by the way. But that's another conversation. Things don't just become, well, yeah, he beat him, because I get it all the time, and I'm thrilled to get it. People are like, well, this guy's got better movement, but as he upped the volume, he wasn't able to handle it with his range management. These are not permanent terms. These are not categories in a video game. These are the words we're using on our journey of exploration to study what this is. Anyways, Kelvin was able to use these skills, popping in and out, drawing out something, making them miss. The simple way to look at it is when your hands were either moving backwards or you were flat-footed, bang, pop back out and you weren't there. He did that so beautifully. He added to that a real comfort, youthful comfort in battle. Kelvin did. And it's so great to watch him fight. So now, that very game that he's been able to beat all these guys with, pop in, bam, pop out, on the way out, there's 7 more inches he has to travel. 7 inches. I mean, if I fold my penis in half, no, that's an old joke. It's an old Winnipeg joke. And a stupid one. That's this far. What's this? You think this is about 7 inches? 6 maybe. So where Kelvin would normally pop out and his front foot would land here, against Weidman, more skilled than anybody he's ever faced. Faster, stronger, better. He now has to move his foot this much further in every moment. Pop in. He has to pop in this much further. And then in getting in there, he has to move back at double that. So we're out here. To get past this, I have to go in 7 inches further. I pop in further than I've ever done. I now have to pop out all of that and any amount that he's moved forward striking me. It's just the assignment is far too large when the game that you've been playing is a game of range manipulation. It's just too hard. So when we talked about it going in, we could talk about it. He's a southpaw and he's an orthodox fighter. He's playing a game of range where he has to literally penetrate 7 inches further inside the force field of the damage, the outside range, the outside hot zone, 7 inches further. Against a guy who's even better, more skilled, more aware, and then go outside. The assignment's just too fucking big. So as we approached it, again, do you want me to talk about where their front feet should go? Do you want me to talk about range management, speed, timing, cutting angles, using feints? We've been fucking talking about this for 4 years. It's not permanent. None of these topics are permanent. Nothing in the world is permanent. In 2013, when a very tiny handful of us started to realize that the love of fighting required deeper analysis, literally on the Fox desk and everywhere else, this fight would end. They would say, well, he got it done at this moment of the 3rd round with this. They'd show the highlight, and then the producer would go in their ear and say, okay, guys, talk about what it means to the division. That's what would happen. I know it. I've had long conversations. I've been a part of these. I've had the producers in my ear. All right, guys, talk about what it means to the division. It doesn't fucking mean anything to the division because all of this is made up. The rankings are made up by people who don't understand fighting. They mean nothing if something else sells. And I'm not hating on this. This is a reality. We want to live in reality. So 2013, 2012, we're living in a world where we're admiring the beauty of the martial arts. And while we're doing it, everybody's talking, what does this mean for the division? What's next for Chris Weidman? Because the people who talked about fighting, a lot of them still do that, or, oh my God, he called out this guy. Do you think he'll respond? You know, a lot of them still do that. That wasn't enough. That wasn't reasonable. It didn't make sense. It wasn't telling the story of the incredible nature of what we had just seen. So some of us started on a journey of going, what does it mean when you put your foot here? How does this slip lead to this thing? How we brought in ideas like movement, distance management. And I'm not fucking bragging here. And if you don't like what I'm saying, fuck off. If you do, or you're like, I'm not sure, a couple Google searches will show you that I'm historically accurate. Look up BJJ Scout, Lawrence Kenshin, Jack Slack, Robin Black, 2013 analysis, and then look anywhere else to see if there was any. That's just the truth. That's just the truth. I'm telling you how it went. Why am I bothering? Why am I doing this? Because if you look at history, you will see that where we stand today, and this is part of the McGregor stuff I talked about last week, is just a part of flowing history. My point being, when people started to discuss timing, range, breaking of rhythms, distance management, using feints, level change, whatever, all of the blocking, checking strikes to throw, how, all of these things, they weren't, hey, we've figured it out forever. This is it, and for the rest of time, let's talk about the Southpaw versus Orthodox matchup. Let's talk about the striking advantage. Let's talk about who Chris has beat and who Kelvin's fought. Then let's talk about the size difference, and then let's just talk about the 7-inch reach advantage, and then let's talk about distance management. And that's not it. That's never been it. And when I watch on television, trust me, I fucking love the UFC. Love it. I'm talking about the UFC or Fox or Bellator or in Russia or anywhere. I'm watching every week, less people watch that thing that I love. Less fucking people every week. And the average viewership of the UFC right now is 49 years old. 10 years ago, it was 34. Okay, so where the fuck are all the kids? We are mining the same shit. It's called commodification, and we're mining it over and over again. And as we do, one sec. Hey, shut up, I'm shooting. I've always wanted to say that. I'm ornery this morning. I don't know why. We are mining the same shit over and over again. We just keep mining the same shit. So last week, rather than say, well, you know, you got a 8-inch reach advantage. You know, Kelvin's been very, very good at closing the distance, managing range, you know, manipulating distance. You know, if he can step outside, and either told the lie about front foot dominance, which is a lie, not true at all. Or we went into, well, you know, we used to believe front foot dominance was this, but actually if you slide inside, you can do this. Kelvin had his moment late in the round where he was able to, I believe round 1, where he was able to close that distance quickly, get it on him. You saw what the goal was. But why am I saying all of this? Because last week what we really talked about was, of course we all know this. I'm not saying anything new. You can get this on fucking the Fox Desk 27 YouTube channels. You can get this on anywhere. You can get this in the bar. You can sit in the bar and talk to your friends and, well, I don't know, man, his volume might be really good, but this guy cuts angles so well. But if he uses feints, it's 5-year-old analysis, right? We know all of this. What analysis is always intended to be was, this happened. Analysis is how and why. He's a better striker. How and why? Okay, well, it's because he's able to play with range. Or he has better footwork. How does he have better footwork? Why does he have better footwork? How does he manipulate range? Why does he manipulate range? That's what analysis is. That's what it is. And we sit around and I watch week after week as some commodified guy with a different pocket square says to a smaller audience every week the exact same fucking thing I saw last week, and I don't know why the fuck I'm even watching it. I don't, and I love most of those guys. You know, I think Brian Stan does a great job. John Anik's like a brother. I fucking love it. But somewhere in the machine, as it's getting smaller and smaller and less people are watching it, instead of people going, hey, what could we change? They're like, well, you know, this formula's been working for a long time. God damn it. I don't know why it's shrinking, but hold to the formula. The world is different. And so ultimately what happened there? What was that fight really about? What all of this, what it wasn't about and why that's not enough, all this shit I'm talking about, what was it really about? What it was really about was, Chris Weidman has so many advantages that if they're both in the same state of performance, Chris will win. In fact, if Chris is in optimum performance, he can beat almost anybody in the world. The skills that he has, the way he puts them together, and we can talk about them, we will talk about them. But the skills that he has and the way he puts them all together, the way that he is aware of everything that's happening and in some way controls the things that are happening and controls himself and expresses this thing that he spent a lifetime doing, he'll fucking beat anybody. So the question wasn't left hand versus right hand and range and all this shit in this fight. The question was, Kelvin Gastelum will show up at the highest level possible in every single fight. And that's why he beat those other 185ers. But if he does that against a guy like Chris Weidman, who has all of these physical advantages, who also comes at that level, he can nearly not win at all. I fucking love Kelvin. What this fight was about was letting him see, if I'm at my very best in every way I am, and Chris is not. Chris has some flaws, or he's psychologically not there, or in some way he's not performing. And performance is physiological and psychological. It's not some made up shit. It's not some shit that just some weirdos talk about. It's what the fuck is happening in there. And as we're watching it, and it frustrates the fuck out of me, as we're watching it every day and after, well, you look here as he moved out here. Why and how this is happening is what's going on in their brains. We've spent years studying what their bodies are doing, what their technique is doing, how and why. The how is how they created it, and the why is why right now, and how they were aware to do it right now. And when those two things are equal with Kelvin Gastelum and Chris Weidman, Weidman's going to win. So ultimately, this brilliant kid, Kelvin Gastelum, just discovered why weight classes exist, why he must. I fucking enjoyed having beers with that guy like crazy. Watch it on our YouTube channel. Such an awesome cat. Loved having a beer. We were talking about food. Food's great. Beer's great. All of these things are awesome. But Kelvin, you can't have him now. You just saw why. You just saw why. The one thing, when you're going to be a world champion at 170 pounds, the thing you're going to have to do is what all these guys do with diet, with controlling the amount of calories out versus calories in, with living is this really not as fun, brother. I'm sorry, man. Not as fun. You're not going to live as fun. Beer's awesome. Chocolates are great. I love chocolate. All these fucking ribs. Come on, man. Wings. This is good shit. But all the guys who are going to watch you, all these guys, they're going to get to have that. You're not going to get to have that. You're going to live a regimented, disciplined lifestyle so that when you fight guys who maybe, and there are some of them, just like Chris was, equal to or maybe even a tiny bit better in some of these areas, these physical areas, these technical areas, and show up because you're a killer performer. You're one of the top. Show up and perform, guys. Get the most out of yourself, guys, and I bet you do it in training too. But when you fight a Chris Weidman, who, when he's on his game, and he's one of those too, you can't beat him. You can't beat him. So you're going to have to live a disciplined lifestyle. You're going to have to change the way you eat, think. Man, smoking weed's fun, but if it makes you hungry, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry to bring you this news. But this is the truth of this fight. So I'm sorry that I go off on these fucking tangents, and I'm sorry I let my frustration get to me. It shouldn't. My curiosity, what I'm motivated by, I want everybody to see what it is. I want everyone to see what this is. And it drives me crazy when I'm reading that the age of the audience is getting older. It drives me crazy when I'm reading that less people are watching this beautiful art form. But I know why it is. It's because we're not fucking showing them what's special about it. We're getting trapped in formulas, and we're getting trapped in repetitive shit that worked. You know, things that worked 10 years ago still worked 5 years ago. Then they changed. Things that worked 1 year ago don't work right now. Shit that worked on Instagram 4 months ago doesn't work right now. The world is accelerating in change. And if we sit around and we broadcast this beautiful art form exactly the same, and we produce it exactly the same, and we narrate it, and we package it, and we talk about it, and we commentate it exactly the same, don't be fucking surprised when it keeps getting smaller. And that will piss me off because I need this. Sorry to be selfish here. I know all of these fighters need this. I know this is their life. I know this is what they've dedicated their lives to. Many of them, this is all there is in the world to them. But then many of us greedy folk over here, this is what we love too. This is how I learn. This is how I interface with the world. This is how I learn how the world works. I can't have this shit disappear because they keep giving us the same boring shit over and over again. And is this partly motivated because I'm sitting here knowing that I can shit that I say ends up on the broadcast six months later anyways. And I'm not saying that to be a dick, and I'm not saying that to undermine these quality people. But shit is ready to change weekly. And we're still sitting around talking about the same old shit, most of which isn't rooted in what's really happening. Kelvin couldn't win that fight if both of them performed at their highest level that they were capable of. Kelvin performs at that level almost every single night, and that's why he can beat a lot of these guys that are way bigger than him. But if you get a Chris Weidman, one of the true geniuses of combat when he's on, he's just as brilliant as Kelvin, performing just as well, just as an optimum state of performance, but bigger, stronger, longer, powerful. Even just the size. Kelvin knocks out a 170 with that one at the end of round one. Knocks him out. It's done. Wins. You won. Kelvin, you fucking won. If that was Cowboy Cerrone. I mean that with love. Fucking love Cowboy Cerrone. Or if that was Gunnar Nelson. If you landed that on Gunnar Nelson, you just won that fight. But you couldn't win this one because if all else is equal, size really fucking matters. Anyways, I'm pretty distracted by McGregor Mayweather, and this week we go deep into that. It's real deep into it. In fact, I'm going to record that pretty much 5 minutes from now. I don't know if when you're seeing this, if it'll be up yet. In fact, I think it might come up before this. So if you haven't watched it yet, please watch it because it is a fascinating thing. It's a moment in time for all of us. It's not just two guys. Anyways, thanks for humoring me on After the Hostilities. Love you. Blackout.